Can you believe that one of the most logical minds on Earth, Elon Musk, once spoke about faith, and not in a private conversation, but live on national television in front of millions and a little girl sitting in the front row? That day, he didn't talk about rockets. He didn't talk about AI. He talked about God. Within the first 60 seconds, Elon brought the entire studio to a hush. The cameras slowed. The host didn't dare interrupt. And what he shared that day might just change the way you see faith, science, and yourself. In this video, you'll discover why a man who lives by technology still chooses to believe in something greater, how a child's innocent question made him pause and answer with his whole heart, and most importantly, how you can find your own sense of purpose even if you're not a genius. But first, let's go back to the exact moment the world seemed to stop, when Elon Musk looked into the camera and said, "I want to talk about something no equation can explain." That day, the studio was packed. Children in matching school uniforms sat quietly on their parents' laps. Teenagers with stars in their eyes leaned forward, dreaming of space. Even older guests were there, their eyes filled with curiosity and quiet skepticism. They came to hear Elon Musk talk about technology, about the future, about things grounded in science. But then, within just seconds, something shifted in the air. Elon walked out, calm as always. But this time, his smile wasn't the usual one. It carried something else, a hesitation, a weight, something unspoken. "I know you didn't come here to hear this," he began, "but today, I want to talk about something more important than rockets or electric cars." The room fell completely silent. The cameras began to slow, panning gently toward Elon's face, toward eyes filled with a kind of depth that no formula could decode. "I'm not here to talk about Mars," he continued. "Today, I want to talk about what holds us together, something no equation can explain." You could feel the entire room leaning toward him. No coughing, no shutter clicks, only silence, thick, tangible. A little girl sat in the front row, both hands wrapped tightly around her entry ticket, her eyes wide open, as if she somehow knew that the moment coming next was meant for her. In that instant, no one remembered they were watching a television program. No one saw Elon Musk as just a tech innovator anymore. He wasn't speaking in the language of machines. He was speaking in the language of belief. And for one brief, breathtaking moment, the world felt like it had stopped. Elon Musk has never hidden his obsession with big questions. Ever since he was a little boy growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, he wasn't like the other kids. While his friends played pirates in the yard, Elon would bury himself in old physics books, lost in the laws of the universe. Not because he wanted to be a scientist, but because he was haunted by one question. Why does the universe follow rules at all? Why does gravity exist? Why is the speed of light the final limit? Who set the rules of this game? No one could answer. And maybe that's why Elon never stopped asking. Years later, at the very peak of the tech world, with rockets in the sky and cars on every highway, Elon still wondered, why does everything feel so perfectly arranged? Planets spin in exact orbits. The constants of physics are tuned so precisely that life can even exist. Just one microscopic deviation, less than 1 part in 10 to the power of 60, and this universe wouldn't be here at all. It's like someone programmed it, Elon once said in an interview, his voice quiet, almost distant. He didn't say God, he didn't say destiny, but he knew something was out there, something beyond what the eye can see. And the question never left him, like a small, flickering flame in the mind of a genius. Not because he needed an answer, but because the act of asking was what anchored him to this world. And then it happened. A little girl in the front row raised her hand, tiny, hair tied back neatly, eyes glowing beneath the studio lights. One question. So simple, yet it struck right where numbers could never reach. "Mr. Musk, do you believe in God?" She raised her hand, slowly, as if even she wasn't sure she was allowed to ask. Every eye in the room turned forward and stopped on those clear, honest eyes. Her hair shimmered under the lights. The soft pink of her dress fluttered gently, like a single petal drifting into the desert of scientific talk. The host saw her, surprised. A quiet nod. Elon paused mid-thought, then turned toward her. "Yes?" His voice was warm, like someone hearing a sacred word for the very first time. She bit her lip, hesitated for a moment, and then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, "Mr. Musk, do you believe in God?" The room fell into a silence unlike any other. Not just quiet, but a silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. A few children squeezed their parents' hands. The host glanced at the director. No one moved. No one spoke. The cameras kept rolling, capturing even the slightest flicker in Elon's face. He didn't answer right away. Elon bowed his head just slightly, took a breath, not guided by scripts, not guided by logic, just honesty. "That's a really good question." His voice softened, but didn't weaken. In fact, it carried a strange weight, as if it held the entire universe inside it. I think about it a lot, about how big the universe is, how complex, how beautiful, and how balanced. I don't have all the answers, but yes, I do believe there's something greater than all of us. He paused, not for drama, but to let the words sink in, to land somewhere deep inside the hearts of those who were listening. Some call it God, some call it the universe, but I believe something is out there, something that guides. The girl smiled, just a small smile. But in that exact moment, the world seemed to loosen its grip, just a little. No one clapped, no one sighed. People just sat still, as if they had just heard something undeniably true. And in that moment, Elon Musk was no longer the man of data and numbers. He was someone learning how to believe. Elon Musk sat back, his fingers gently interlocked, as if he were flipping through the pages of an invisible book. He wasn't answering the little girl anymore. Now, he was speaking to everyone, and maybe to himself. "Science can tell us how things work," he said, his voice slow, like each word had been carefully weighed before being spoken. "But it doesn't always tell us why." The words sounded simple, but for someone like Elon, they were the summary of a lifetime, a journey that started in an old reading room in Pretoria, where a young boy once read about gravity and wondered who had written the rules of this game. Science could explain orbits, the speed of light, how neutrons spin around the nucleus, but it couldn't answer why those things had to exist, why everything seemed so precise, so deliberate. "Sometimes, when I look at the stars," Elon continued, "I don't just see patterns, I see intention." That wasn't a confession of a religious man. It was the quiet sigh of a mind, standing before a picture far too big to fully comprehend, and humble enough to stop trying. He didn't need the world to agree with him. He just needed to finally say aloud what had been quietly rising inside him for years. "I've built rockets," he said. "I've launched satellites into orbit. I've stared down at Earth from space. And when you see how small we are, and yet how precise everything is, you can't help but wonder, was this all an accident?" Silence. That question didn't need an answer. It just needed to be heard. And maybe just hearing it makes you feel a little smaller, and somehow a little more in place. Have you ever seen Earth from the outside? Elon Musk has. Not in photos, not on Google Earth, but from orbit, through the glass of a spacecraft window, where the black of space isn't just black. It's absolute emptiness. He once said, "When you see Earth from a distance, you stop seeing countries. You stop seeing borders. You see one small, fragile blue planet floating in an endless ocean. And in that moment, Elon didn't think about horsepower. He didn't think about data or algorithms. He thought only one thing. How could all of this just happen by coincidence? He wasn't the first to feel that. Edgar Mitchell, an Apollo astronaut, once said that when he left Earth, he felt the presence of a higher intelligence guiding everything, from the smallest dust particle to the orbits of planets. Elon didn't say God, but the feeling was the same. The odds, Elon said, of everything aligning so perfectly, for life to exist, for humans to evolve, for me to be sitting here speaking to you, are so low. It almost feels like someone cheated the simulation. When a scientist begins to speak of probability as if it were destiny, you know they've seen something numbers can't hold. He looked at the numbers, the expansion rate of the universe, the precise strength of electromagnetism that allows carbon to form, gravity, just strong enough to bind galaxies, but gentle enough to let life emerge. 1 decimal too far, Elon said, and everything collapses. He never claimed the universe was created by chance. He only said it's too precise for that. And in a quiet moment, as he sat there in front of millions of people, he admitted softly, "I don't know who designed this, but I no longer believe it just happened." A boy raised his hand. He looked to be about 12. His eyes were unusually serious, as if carrying the question of every grown-up in the world. Elon turned to face him. "If there's a God, why do bad things happen?" It wasn't just a question. It was pain, folded neatly into 8 small words. In a room that had just brushed the edge of the divine, that question pulled everyone back to earth, to war, to sickness, to children starving, and to people who pray, but aren't saved. Elon lowered his head. In that moment, he no longer looked like a CEO. He looked like a father, a man who had lost a child, a man who knew exactly what silence with no answer feels like. "That's a really good question," he said, "and one that people have been asking for thousands of years." A pause, not to think, but to feel. "I don't have the full answer," he said quietly, "but I think part of it is choice. We live in a world where people are free to do good or bad, and sometimes terrible things happen because of those choices." The boy nodded as if he understood, but Elon wasn't finished. "But I also believe that good can come from pain, that even in our worst moments, something shifts." Elon shared the story of his 3rd rocket launch, how it failed, how the entire company stood on the edge of collapse. Some employees cried, others walked away in silence, but one stayed. "One engineer stayed back that night," Elon said, "just to work on a fix. He didn't have to, but he did." That was a choice. A small light inside a large darkness, a signal, if you're quiet enough to notice it. "So yes," Elon said, "there's pain, there's loss. But I also believe there's always a path through it." The air in the studio softened, not because the answer was perfect, but because maybe answers were never meant to live in words. They live in a look, in a feeling, and somewhere deep in each of our hearts. Before there was SpaceX, Tesla, or Starlink, Elon stood in the ruins. Not physical ruins, but the scattered pieces of a dream. 2008. SpaceX had just failed for the 3rd time. 3 rockets, 3 explosions, 3 chances, vanished into the void. Tesla was nearly out of cash. Investors had stopped calling. The media called him the madman burning batteries. But worst of all, Elon and Justine, his first wife, lost their firstborn son. Nevada Alexander Musk, just 10 weeks old. No clever words could ease that kind of pain. No laws of physics could explain why. "I didn't cry right away," Elon said in a rare interview. "I just stood there. It felt like a part of me had been ripped away, forever." He didn't go to church. He didn't post a prayer. But that didn't mean he didn't believe. The only thing he held on to was purpose, something beyond himself. Not because he knew what it was, but because without it, he wouldn't have survived. I didn't know what it was, Elon said, but I knew I had to build. I had to keep going. And maybe, in that exact moment, Elon stopped living for success. He started living to fulfill a mission he didn't yet know how to name. When everything around him collapsed, he didn't reach for money. He didn't reach for fame. He reached for meaning, vague, hard to grasp, but real enough to breathe. I believed there was a reason I was still here, he said. And even if I didn't know what it was, I was going to find out. Sometimes what keeps you going isn't faith in God, but the belief that your pain means something. There's something interesting. Most people think that if you believe in science, you can't believe in God. That faith is for those who don't know, and science for those who want to know everything. But Elon doesn't think that way. Science answers the how, he said, but faith helps us live with the why. He wasn't trying to prove that God exists, nor was he trying to deny it. Elon simply admitted, there are things we can't test yet, but we can still feel them, like love, like sadness, like hope. The very thing every scientist needs after failure. I don't believe science and belief are enemies, Elon said. They are partners in the search for meaning. In fact, many of the greatest minds in history said the same. Isaac Newton once wrote over 1 million words on the Bible. Albert Einstein said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." And somehow, Elon echoed that idea, not with philosophy, but with his own story, on a modern stage in front of millions. To him, the bridge between science and faith isn't found in textbooks. It's built through daily choices, to keep going even when there are no results, to believe in meaning without proof, to persist when everyone else says, "Give up." You don't have to choose, he said. You can believe in reason and still believe in something greater. That sentence wasn't loud. It didn't slam the table. It didn't try to convince anyone. But it opened a door for all those who once believed they had to pick only one path. After speaking so deeply about faith and science, Elon quietly turned his gaze back to the children sitting in the front row. His face softened, no longer a CEO, no longer the leader of the tech world. He looked like a father. "You don't have to build rockets to change the world," he said, his voice gentle, like a lullaby whispered at midnight. "You just have to believe that you matter." A few kids sat up straighter, some eyes lit up. Not because they fully understood his words, but maybe for the first time they saw themselves in a great story. "Each of you," Elon said, "has something inside that no one else has. A way of thinking, a kind of kindness, a purpose he didn't tell them what to do. He just planted a seed, something small but powerful, a belief that, if nurtured at the right time, could turn an ordinary life into a mission. You don't need to wait until you're older to matter. You can start now, just by choosing to be kind, to help, to believe." In the middle row, a boy pulled out his phone and typed something into his notes. In the back, a little girl leaned into her mother's arms and whispered something only they could hear. Something had shifted, and it didn't need to be loud. "The most powerful force in the universe," Elon said, "is not gravity, it's purpose. And if you believe you have one, then nothing can stop you." That sentence wasn't printed on banners, it didn't trend on social media, but it was etched into the hearts of the children sitting in that room, and maybe into the hearts of those listening now, through this very video. Because if every child grows up with that belief, we won't just have more scientists, doctors, or engineers. We'll have human beings who believe they were born to do something that matters. When the broadcast ended that night, Elon didn't step off the stage right away. He stayed for a few extra minutes, just sitting, silent, The studio lights dimmed. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway. Outside, somewhere in the distance, the stars were beginning to appear. Elon stared into the darkness. He didn't say a word, but if someone had been sitting beside him, they would have felt it clearly. He had spoken from the heart, not to impress, not to prove anything, but simply to finally say out loud what so many people have always thought, but never dared to voice. "I don't have all the answers," Elon said, just before the cameras cut to black. "But I do believe we're part of something bigger. And if you ever feel lost or unsure, just remember this. The question itself is sometimes more important than the answer." A pause. And then, his eyes met the lens one last time. "So ask. Keep asking. That's where everything meaningful begins. You may be somewhere completely different right now. Not on a stage, not under bright lights. Maybe you're in your bedroom, on a bus, or in the middle of an ordinary, tiring day. But no matter where you are, you still have the right to ask. Ask about meaning. Ask about purpose. Ask, why was I born? And if this video has touched something in you, share it with someone you believe might also need a reason to begin again. And don't forget to subscribe so I can keep telling the stories no one tells, about the questions no one answers, but that are always worth asking. Because in the end, the ones who change the world aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones brave enough to ask the right questions.